This isn't about pulling rank. It's about keeping your head out of a noose. You all are walking into a trap. And if you weren't operating on emotion and adrenaline, you'd see that.
This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Operation Anteater, bonus episode 1. When we left off, Angela had told Q that LJ was acting like he hated Regina. And during Regina's testimony in front of the round table, she'd said that LJ couldn't stand her guts. But with his back up against the wall, LJ had lost it. That hurt that Q told Angela LJ was holding and not hate spilled all over the round table. Because he'd gotten the OGs together and told them the real reason why he'd gone to Oregon. And it didn't have a damn thing to do with his love for Regina or his role as Angela's right hand. In a private room with the cameras off, Q said, "Talk to me, bro." And LJ said, "She was my wife. She's the mother of my children. She crazy as hell, but she was there for me. When I lost both my parents and I was facing my own mortality, I stopped being in love with her a long time ago. But I will always love her. I don't know what the future holds, and I've learned to never say never. But my eyes are on the future, and what we had is in the past. I know what God says about forgiveness, and I'm working on it. But healing my children is my number one priority. And if she can't make that her priority, then I can guarantee that not only is reconciliation out of the question, but the day won't even come where we can be friends again. And if anything, that's the saddest part." Q said, "I get it, bro. I get why you lost it in there. And I know that it's selfish of me to ask you this. But I gotta ask, as long as my wife is in the mix, I need you right there with her. There isn't anybody else in this world other than Wood who I'd trust to keep her safe. I understand why you were offended in there. If the shoe was on the other foot, I would have been offended too. But I'm asking you to keep the main thing the main thing. Because I can't do my job if I don't know that my wife is in good hands." LJ said, "I got you, bro." And the two men dapped up and hugged one another. Down the hall, the General Ezra and Catherine were bumping heads. Catherine had questioned why Easy thought it was okay to go over to Ron's house and put hands on that man. And Ezra was questioning why Ron thought it was okay to get up off the floor and before he cleaned the blood off his mouth, call Catherine, of all people. Catherine said, "You are not in a position to question me. I do the questioning." Ezra said, "With all due respect, you can question me about how I do my job. But if you got questions about what went down with my son and your puppet, you need to question your puppet. I suggest you do a better job of pulling his strings, because I'm pretty sure that the Queen Bee would have a serious problem with her ex-son-in-law mishandling her daughter." Catherine said, "Are you threatening me? Don't get beside yourself." Ezra said, "No threat, just facts. I report directly to your nephew. How about we include him in this conversation and let him sort it out?" Catherine said, "No need. I'll handle Ron. But you need to keep your son away from him. Whatever is going on between Ron and Anya is between Ron and Anya." On the other end of the hall, Emmanuel Lopez was saying to his right-hand man, Javier, "I think that LJ's reporting is done. It's probably best that when we reconvene, you pick up where he left off. Simply start with the phone call you received from Bosch. We'll have each person who was managing a team on the ground in Oregon pick up as need be to report on their actions." Javier agreed, and Manny said, "I'll go find Q and let him know." When Manny saw Q and LJ leaving from the small meeting room where Q had taken LJ to calm down, Manny said, "Just the man I wanted to see. When we go back in there, Javier is going to pick up the story. And LJ, you did a bang-up job in there. I'm proud of you, son." Confused, LJ said, "I just cussed all of y'all out." "What you mean you proud of me?" Manny said, "You've been wound up tight for months, years, like a coiled spring, ready to explode under pressure and barely contained. I'm glad you let it fly in there and not in an environment that wasn't controlled. There is nothing more dangerous than a man who's suppressing his emotions, taking lick after lick, and not having an outlet where he can express it all. I'm sorry that we had to push you as much as we did. If you need somebody to be mad at me, because it was all my idea." LJ said, "Y'all did that ish on purpose?" Manny said, "Absolutely. I know you, LJ. I know that you are not a reckless man. I know you would never put yourself or anybody else in danger solely to have your own way or serve your own interests. I knew that there was something much deeper under the surface, and I wasn't all that interested in knowing what it was. I was just interested in seeing you release it all. Regina isn't the only one who needs to focus on healing, and your children aren't the only ones who need healing. Now that you've gotten that monkey off your back, get to it, young blood. And then Manny walked away. LJ and Q just looked at one another and shook their heads. The OGs were always up to something. So when the round table reconvened, Q said, I think that it's appropriate for Javier to pick up where LJ left off. The Queen Mother said, hold on for a second, Q. LJ, thank you. You showed all of us your heart today and reminded us all of why we actually do what we do. Not one of us is above reproach, and every one of us has been in your seat. We've all had to answer hard questions about why we made the decisions that we made and decided to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. LJ said, I'm not asking for forgiveness. The Queen Mother said, touche. My point is, there isn't a head in this room other than Alejandro, who hasn't been in the hot seat. We don't do this job emotionless. I'd like to believe that we all do what we do because we love, not in spite of it. And what your father told you was right. You should walk away from any table where respect is not being served. But this isn't one of them. I think I speak for the group when I say that we all respect you and we respect the decisions that you made. And every head around the room concurred. The Queen Mother looked at Manny and said, Manny? Manny said, LJ and I have already spoken. Let's get this show on the road. It's getting late. And then Javier said, I received a call from Brutal Bosch. He was rather perturbed by the fact that Stax had informed him that he would not be going to Oregon. His goal was to go over Stax's head and get my permission to go. But when I got the full story from him, because I had not heard from Stephanie or Stax that they were already on a Lopez plane headed to Oregon, I knew that I needed to be on the first thing smoking to prevent them from taking matters into their own hands. Idra asked, or do you mean you wanted to be the one to take matters into your own hands? Javier said, no, I had a plan that would absolutely end the war against the International Trafficking Organization and tie up all of the loose ends at one time. Where are you? With whom am I speaking? This is Javier. I'm in Oregon. Why? Javier said, I need you to stay there. I'm gonna send you some coordinates and you need to meet me there. When the plane that Javier, Bosch, Donald Green, Johnny Decker, and Danny Briggs were on landed in Oregon, AJ was waiting at the private airstrip. AJ was nervous as hell, because he knew exactly who Javier was. When LJ had called AJ and verified that he'd flown Regina to Oregon, AJ knew he had made a huge mistake. But if Javier was calling him, it was worse than he thought. And when Javier and Bosch and a team of soldiers deboarded with 3 men tied up and seriously injured, AJ almost passed out. AJ couldn't have been more relieved when the words that came out of Javier's mouth weren't addressing them. They were instructions. Javier said, I take it you know how to fly one of these, pointing at the plane that they just exited. When AJ said he did, Javier asked, and Q knows where to find the plane that you flew here? AJ said yes, and quickly boarded the empty plane. In the cockpit, he found the pilot, who turned the reins over to him, saying, the return manifest has already been completed. The coordinates are locked in. You just need to await further instructions when you land. And as AJ flew the plane back to Puerto Rico, he prayed that his father wasn't going to kill him. Meanwhile, in the back seat of a chauffeured car, Javier had just made contact with LJ. Javier said, this isn't about pulling rank. It's about keeping your head out of a noose. You all are walking into a trap. And if you weren't operating on emotion and adrenaline, you'd see that. I'm telling you to adjust your plan, not abandon it. This is no longer a rescue mission. It's a hostile takeover. First, you need to take control of Noah Kirk's airstrip and his safe houses, because I can guarantee he has more than one. Put your best hitters on finding Regina and her mother. Make sure they understand that as soon as they locate them, they need to get as far away from that location as fast as they possibly can. LJ asked, and what you gonna do in the meantime? Javier said, I'll be making his partners wish that they'd gone into a different line of business. Between my team and yours, we should be able to figure out where they've stashed those women. LJ said, we've already got Zoe and the Anteater running down other properties owned by the shell company that own the 2 safe houses that we've already identified. Javier said, well, I'll let you know what other details I get out of these 3. LJ asked, 3? Javier said, his co-workers brought company.
while it was Johnny Decker who'd hired Danny Briggs to go after Stephanie, Baby Kari, and CT in Puerto Rico. It was Noah Kirk who had the business relationship with Danny Briggs in the first place. That information had been discovered when Johnny Decker was getting the Five Family treatment. The heads of the Five Families had decided that Johnny Decker's lieutenant was an innocent party. The fact that his boss had betrayed him by sleeping with and impregnating his wife was all the information he needed to make his lips real loose. So they decided to cut him and his wife loose. He could do whatever he wanted with his unfaithful wife and her illegitimate child. But for his trouble, he'd be inheriting the Briggs organization, an organization that would now be under the control of the Five Families. And since Danny Briggs was on the hook for just about every crime that the Five Families had committed in the ongoing war with the traffickers, it would make sense that he, along with the three remaining heads of the trafficking organization, would work together to get out of the States in order to avoid prosecution and retribution from the Five Families. So hearing LJ's plan to save Regina and Mom Joyce and take out Noah Kirk, Javier had told him that plan needed to be adjusted. Noah Kirk would absolutely get his, but he and his three friends would need to take a ride first. Now, LJ didn't know Javier's full plan, but he didn't like it. And he knew that everyone who'd come to Oregon to help him execute his initial plan weren't gonna like it either. Because every last one of them had a bone to pick with Noah Kirk. When he told Angela that he wanted to go to Oregon, and she gave him the green light, Q immediately said that if LJ was going, he was going too. And as soon as Q went to pack his bags, Big Wood went to pack his. When Angela called Stephanie and told Stephanie what was going on, Stephanie had called her best friend True. True said, Wood is injured. He has absolutely no business going to Oregon. Stephanie said, I knew you would say that. What you trying to do, best friend? True said, that's a stupid question. Miss Charlotte! When Miss Charlotte entered the room, True said, your son trying to get himself killed. I can't have that. You on grandma duty. I'll be back. And when I come back, your son will be with me. Miss Charlotte said, okay, True, do what you got to do. Just be careful. True turned back to the phone and said, how soon can you get a plane to Denver? Stephanie logged onto her computer and checked the location of all of the Lopez planes. She said, we got one in Vegas right now. It'll be there in less than 2 hours. And you and I will be landing at the same time, because I'm on my way. Then Stephanie heard the tone in her Bluetooth that indicated she was receiving an incoming call. When she checked the call ID, she said, I'll see you in a couple of hours. I need to take this call. It's Salima. When the second call was connected, Stephanie said, what's up? Salima said, you tell me, what the hell is going on in Oregon? Wise had to go into the office. He said he's playing backup for LJ because LJ went to Oregon on some Five Family business. And apparently Q is there too. Stephanie brought Salima up to speed, and Salima said, I'm on my way. Stephanie said, now, Salima, you know Wise. Salima said, oh, hell no. If we end in a war, I already know all of y'all going out with a bang. Y'all ain't leaving me out. I'm going to call him. Don't worry. Salima called Wise and said, baby, so I just talked to Stephanie, right? And Regina and her mother have been kidnapped by the head of the trafficking organization. It's an all hands on deck kind of situation. And I'm one of the hands. They need to be on deck. Wise said, big gangster. I thought we had an agreement. Salima said, we did. And you agreed to stay home from work too. But you at work? Wise said, ain't nothing I'm going to be able to say that's going to stop you from going, is it? Salima said, I'd prefer that we not turn this into an argument. I'd like your blessing. It would bode really well for you supporting my efforts when I go back to work full time. Wise said, all right, big gangster. Do what you got to do. Be safe and come back to us. Salim said, absolutely. I love you. Bye. And then she ran to her weapons room and started gearing up for war.
When Stephanie got to the airstrip on the Lopez estate in Puerto Rico,
Stax and Bosch were waiting for her there. Stax said, you don't need to do this. Stephanie said, like hell I don't. If my right hand is getting in the field, I'm damn sure getting in it. Bosch said, wait a minute. True going to Oregon too? Oh yeah, I'm going. Stax said, no, you're not. Wood is in Oregon. Bosch said, I don't give a damn who's in Oregon. Stack said, stand down. I don't know how many lives you think you got, but I'd hate for your life to end from friendly fire. How about you stay here and see what you can get out of them other two fools? I'm sure they have some information that we can use. Bosch said, but. Stack said, but nothing. I'm going. I got this. And then he and Stephanie boarded the private jet that was waiting and ready to take them to Oregon. Fuming, Bosch sped over to the safe house where Donald Green and Johnny Decker were being held. When he saw that Danny Briggs was there, a plan quickly formulated in his mind. He grabbed his phone and called Javier. He asked, "Where exactly is Noah Kirk planning to run to?" When Javier told him that Noah Kirk's destination was Eritrea, Bosch said, "I know a man who owns an African pig farm in Eritrea, and those pigs have a penchant for white meat." Javier said, "Oh, really? Tell me more." And then Bosch told Javier all about how LJ had gone to Oregon because Regina had gone rogue, and that Q, Wood, True, Stephanie, Salima, and Stax had all gone to Oregon too. When Javier called the General Ezra and verified that he was also in Oregon, Javier said, "We on our way to Oregon. Call your mans in Eritrea and get them 3 niggas and all the soldiers at the safe house over to the estate. We got a flight to catch." So before the call between Javier and LJ ended, Javier said, "Connect the Anteater with Bosch so that he can feed him any information that he gets out of these 3 bozos." And LJ's heart sank. He said, "We don't need no drama between True, Wood, and Bosch. I need everybody who's here focused on the goal." Javier said, "We are all playing for the same team. If any one of those 3 can't do their jobs without letting their personal differences get in the way, then they are unfit for the job. Bosch is here at my direction. The last thing that man wants is to put his life, his job, or True's on the line. I trust him like you should have trusted me, but that's a conversation for another day. Keep me posted." Javier got to the safe house where he'd sent Bosch, the soldiers, and the 3 men. Bosch was well into giving Danny Briggs the 5 family treatment. They'd beaten him to the safe house because Javier needed to give his pilot instructions. He also needed to ensure that the pilot had transportation to his next destination. As soon as he'd finished giving LJ the business, he'd called Bosch and made sure he was clear about the goal of his extracurricular activities. The stash house that Noah Kirk had taken Mom Joyce to was owned by a shell company under Noah Kirk's control. But the second stash house that several of Noah Kirk's goons had been tracked to was owned by a completely different shell company. The Anteater was having some difficulty connecting it to any of the heads of the trafficking organization. Javier suspected that Danny Briggs was the missing connection. And by the time Javier arrived at the safe house, Bosch had already gotten 2 possible locations for where Noah Kirk could have taken Regina and Mom Joyce. Javier said, "Go ahead and pause what you're doing and connect with the Anteater." And in no time flat, the Anteater had made the connections. That second safe house and that second shell company was in fact owned by Danny Briggs. The 2 locations that Danny Briggs had provided were also owned by that same shell company. The Anteater quickly communicated this to LJ, and LJ sent a team to each of those locations. His estimation, Regina and Mom Joyce had to be at one or the other. As soon as they were secured, he and Q and their team would move in on that second stash house because they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Noah Kirk was inside it. When Salima found out the plan, she was pissed because Stephanie and Sax were in charge of the team that was running in warehouse number 1. And True and Big Wood were responsible for the team that was on the 3rd stash house, which meant her and her team was sitting idly by, twiddling their damn thumbs. She said, "I did not come all this damn way not to get in on the damn action." LJ said, "Cool your jets. You're manning the last team. We are still verifying information, and we need you and your team free if it turns out that those 2 locations are dead ends." Salima said, "Oh, so you know what you're doing. Okay. Meanwhile, over at the safe house, where Bosch was treating Danny Briggs, Bosch had just fed the Anteater the code to the security system at the warehouse and the 3rd stash house. And it only took him a matter of minutes to realize that both locations were crawling with soldiers. And as he watched each team approach each location in unison, he saw something else. The soldiers at the locations were not about to be caught unaware. They had to have had a heads up. And they weren't preparing for battle. They were preparing to escape. And then it hit them. The teams were walking into a trap. When the words "trap" came across LJ's phone, LJ radioed to Stax and True in unison. "Hang back. Hang back. It's a trap.
War going on, but ain't nothing bleeding. If ain't nothing coming in, then ain't nothing